Hello and welcome back.
To the In Your Mind podcast.
Another week.
Indeed, it has come around against all odds. Not really. But you never know. Do you think about the probability of tomorrow coming ever?
Yeah.
Do you think it's high or do you think it's low? Do you think that there have been days where there's been like 1% probability and we all woke up
And
the next day
didn't
not
realise.
knowing?
Could have been.
That's wild.
Or there could have been like a meteorite that just scraped past us or something. And it was within that.
Or Kim Jong-un was like finger on the button
Yeah.
but didn't press it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could be happening right now.
Yeah. Well, this is a lovely way to intro an episode, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Anyway.
Yeah, no, I do think about the possibility of tomorrow, and a lot of the time it just seems pretty certain because we just go, yep, oh, we can do that tomorrow. But I think when I can feel myself like negatively spiraling or just like thinking about the day in like, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to, like, I'm like, like all these things are just choices that I've made and I get to decide whether I want to do that or not. And also, like, what do I really want to do today that if I didn't get tomorrow, would I be okay having today as today? You know, like, would I be okay reflecting upon it and why I've decided to make these decisions today? Like, is it a good use of my time, basically? Am I doing the things that I want to?
It's good you recognize the negative feelings and you use that as a catalyst for reflection, which I think is very important. I feel like a lot of people just avoid the negative feelings and don't actually reevaluate and figure out if what they're doing is actually what they want to do.
Well, it just seems like a logical way to go about it, really. Like, if you're finding something hard, like, why is that? And is it actually what you want to do? And is it just hard because it's hard? Or is it not enjoyable because it's not in a line with what you actually want to do and achieve? And it gives you more clarity on your behaviors and your actions and all of that stuff.
Yeah, we were talking about like that's why ADHD would be sick last night.
Yeah.
Because you literally don't have the capacity to focus on something that you're not interested in. Which like can be a real inconvenience when, you know, it's required for you to do something that you're not particularly thrilled by. But also like if you're aware of that, then you can lean into it where it works for you.
Yeah. I think like it's interesting to see ADHD as an issue because the things that it means for that person are basically just societal issues or like issues that come up. Yeah, societal issues. Like it's, I don't know, that person has way more attention on their own desires or their own interests intrinsically rather than like externally what they should be fulfilling in order to be like a good citizen or to, you know, be well-rounded, which is important in our society to a degree to function and to like live the way that we do. But it's interesting to see like, if our society was set up slightly differently, like what would it look like? And that we were also reflecting upon like the superpowers of just like real in-depth focused attention on only the things that you're super interested in. And we're saying that, yeah, we all have that to a degree. Like we have more focus on the things that we find enjoyable. Like, and we find it harder to do the things that are boring to us, but it's just to a differing level.
Do you think we have to be well-rounded to exist in society? What do you mean by that?
Well, like to do like mundane tasks, like go to the grocery store, like there's some things that we kind of like need for our survival that are mundane and not necessarily like interesting, like doing our taxes or going to the grocery store or knowing how to talk to people, because that's part of like how we get things done and like what we need within our like work lives. And like there's a lot of skills that I think we just do because it's like serves us in order to like survive, and it's not necessarily out of like interest really.
But is surviving not in your interest?
Yeah, it definitely is within your interest. Yeah. I've been given this task this week for one of my subjects. It's like a assessment and intervention subject. So it's basically teaching you some interviewing skills and kind of how it would be in a clinical environment or a setting, like where you're helping patients and just going through different techniques that could help them. But yeah, so one of the things that we are kind of testing this week is how easy is it? I don't like the way that I framed that. Yeah, one of the tasks that we have for that subject is to reword our like inner, reword the languages. So the task that we're given this week is just to see how we can change our language and how easy that is or how uneasy that is. So whenever we have statements or language that we use, such as like we should, must, or ought, like those phrases, then we need to change them to coulds. And then we've got to reflect on how that feels and how easy it is and what it shifts within us, like how that emotionally changes our state. And then the other aspect is we've got to stop ourselves or try and stop when we are having an inner argument with another person, like in our heads, basically. Like we are fighting with someone internally and we just have to say stop. And we can say it out loud or it just internally. We just have to say stop. And to see how easy or how many times we actually remember to do that. Yeah. So I think that's a pretty interesting thing to do and to give a go. Yeah, so I think by changing shoulds to could, it like redirects and opens up the possibility of like you having a choice in the decision or the statement that you've just made. Like it immediately shows you that like it's within your capability and you get to decide if you want to do that or not. Like if you said, oh, I should do this or I should do that, it's kind of like self-degrading a little bit, or it's kind of like all these expectations that you're placing on yourself without a seemingly like a choice. But when you change it to could, it's showing you that you can decide like, oh, I can do that or I could do this. Like you're the one that's in control of your actions, which I think gives you like more power over your emotions and over like, yeah, your life. But I mean, I've literally only done it for one day, so I can't really, that's just immediately what I think. Oh, it's, if I go could, that's what it feels like to me.
Has it been easy?
No. I think it's a lot to think about and to remember as well. I remember it mainly after the fact, not like during the moment. There's only been a couple times where I've remembered it in the moment. Most of the time it's after the fact. I'm like, in that scenario I said should. Or even internally, I'm like, oh, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. Oh, I should go here. I do a lot of that internally. I don't actually say much of it externally, I found. Like I don't actually really mention that to others, but definitely internally. It's more of a thing, which maybe makes it harder to catch too, because I can't hear myself saying it. It's not as clear.
Yeah. Is it something you've done much before?
What?
Reframed it?
I think so, yeah. I think when you get to a point of like just being fed up in negative feelings or like language, and you reach a point in your day and you're like, oh, like, why is this happening? And then you're going, well, I feel like I feel forced into all these obligations. And then I think questioning the truth of that is helpful. And are you truly obligated to do anything? Not really. Like it might feel like that, but you do have like the option. And yeah, I guess it's just like aligning things with like your priorities and like why you want to do that thing in the first place. And like it's not always that it's fun or that's beneficial, but it might like lead you to something in the future and you're like, oh, this is going to be really beneficial for me. This is why I want to do that. Or yeah, I think it's something that I've done in the past, but not so like structured like this really, and not intentionally being like every single time I'm going to hear should, must, or ought, I'm going to switch my language. Like I've never done something that specific. Yeah. Have you?
Well, I've just kind of aligned should with could within myself anyway. Like the things I should do are the things I could do and want to do, so I don't really feel trapped or obligated to do it.
So should and could has the same definition for you or connotations?
Yeah, they don't really feel very different to me.
At first glance in the exercise, I thought the same, but then I thought about when I say it outright, like when I say, oh, I should do this, it's usually coming with like some negative self-beliefs, whereas could feels like more possibility and more choice. Does it not feel like that for you?
I just don't attach any negative ideas to should.
Well, how do you see it?
Well, I think I see it the same as everyone, but I don't view it as I should do it. Like, I don't use it as a obligation. Do you know what I mean?
But do you see it as an expectation?
Yeah.
Should?
Yeah.
What about could?
No, I don't think there's much expectation in could.
See, I think the expectation is the thing that feels like more pressurizing with the should. It might not be negative, but it feels, for me it feels like there's more pressure.
Yeah, there is.
And I find pressure usually filled with like more anxiety. And I guess I just correlate that with more negative.
Yeah.
Like I do think it's a slight distinction. Like it's not a massive, huge thing, but I do think that it would create a difference in, like a slight difference in my attitude towards things. And do you think that it would for you?
No, because I have a positive relationship with pressure, I think.
How so?
Like if I feel pressure, that's a good thing.
Why?
Because it's pushing me out of my comfort zone.
Do you not feel flustered by it?
Yeah.
Do you think you do as well when you have pressure, as opposed to when you don't have pressure?
100%. I think everyone performs better under pressure than with no pressure. I think there's too much pressure and people crumble under too much pressure, but I think everyone performs better under pressure rather than no pressure. Because if there's no pressure, then there's no commit.
I guess I'm seeing pressure in the extreme pressure that you're talking about. Like there is a force that gets you to do things, but for some reason I associate pressure with just like a high amount. Like when I instantly think powerful pressure, like woof, like something like quite controlling and quite like intense. Whereas I get where you're coming from though. Like you need something that you need a drive. You need some sort of force to get you to do anything. And I guess that could be termed pressure. Yeah. It's so interesting how like everyone has slight variations in definitions that can instantly transform what you're saying. Or can be like, it's usually the distinction between agreeing and not agreeing is just the slight definition of what you're talking about.
Yeah, it pisses me off.
Yeah, it's so annoying. Like, it's just that we all slightly correlate things with, minute details, but that all the little details that build up and connect can flip someone from an agreeing to a against or like opposite,
Well, everyone agrees it's just a misunderstanding and a lack of clarification.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then I think there's like, for me, I definitely feel like my self-worth or honestly just like my ego basically is the thing that tries to make that distinction separate, trying to like separate myself from another self in order to like, protect and just be like, okay, no, I know what I know. I don't need others.
Or their definition's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, it's so crazy how we have such defensive walls around what we internally believe, and that even if another person is coming, like has the same belief but has different definitions for things, we can't see it properly because of like the ego shell is so protective.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's usually an insecurity around feeling or having a low sense of self-worth. Like if you're not smart or know as much as the other person, then you are less valuable because you have less information to utilize and apply. And that could feel like your place or your role in society is in danger. So I think people just, myself included, just build a wall
Mm.
to hold what we think we know and what we think we believe
Mm-hmm.
when there feels like a threat to it. Because if there's a threat to it, then we could be wrong. And if this is wrong, so much more stuff could be wrong.
Mm.
And then our place in society is threatened.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're just defending your own beliefs when they're under threat, then you're like defending your downfall in a
Mm.
lot of ways. But it's very difficult to step outside of it when you're emotional.
Yeah. It's interesting though, because I see it in, like, I think that's just, like, we all have a level of that, just being humans and separate beings, physical beings. So I think, yeah, it kind of makes sense, but it's wild to reflect on. Like, even when you're, like, you were just talking to me, I find it so hard to disengage from, like, my own thoughts about, like, oh, what about this? What about that? Like, because I want to hold on to,
Your sense of self.
yeah, but it's not even, yeah, I guess it's a sense of self. But when you're speaking and I start to get questions that arise within me, are those questions coming from, like, genuine inquiry, or is it coming from things that you've said that sparks unfamiliar territory within me and I feel, like, vulnerable? But I think it's, yeah, what I was really trying to say is that we prioritize our own thinking and see it coming from our perspective rather than others' perspectives. And we place more importance on remembering what we're trying to say rather than remembering what you're trying to say, like another person's trying to say. And it's hard to give up a level of, like, control and just be like, it's okay to not have my own thoughts. I can just focus truly on what you're saying, and I don't have to think about how it relates to me in any sense. Like, that can come later. Put that on the back burner. That's not the priority right now. It's really hard to do that. And I think it takes so much practice. Yeah. But I'm trying to do that even in this conversation, and I feel myself doing that. Of, like, oh, okay, how does that relate to something that I know?
Yeah.
Like, you're instantly relating it to yourself, which is, like, a very natural thing. Like, that's, we're humans, we do that. But I think there is a benefit to fully listening and experiencing what the other person is saying, because you get a way fuller picture of everything to then integrate after they're finished and reflect on. Yeah.
Yeah. The way I see it is, like, you don't gain anything from thinking in your own head about what you think about what they said, because that's all stuff you already know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the only thing you can actually gain is if you're actually listening to what they're saying and you're actually asking them genuine questions. But you also need your own thoughts and opinions to have a conversation, for them to bounce off of you and for you to bounce off of them.
Yeah. But I think you need to put that as the second priority, like, of order of, like, thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, you only employ it when it's necessary.
Yeah.
Which is very rare, I think.
Yeah.
Like, percentage of conversation, if you want to get the most out of it, I think at least half of it should be the other person. But that being said, like, it depends what the scenario is. Like, every situation's different.
Yeah.
Like, if someone asks you a question or for advice, well, even then, but there are certain situations where it's important for you to give your point of view.
Mm-hmm. Especially when it's being asked or explicitly called on.
Well, I don't know if that's a good example, because I find even reflecting the question back on them helps them more than what you could ever tell them. But I'm sure there's examples where, like, they have a problem that they've never faced before and you have in the past. Maybe that's a case where you can give them what you know. Or just, to keep the conversation going.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think in our society, we typically view conversation as, like, the importance of a conversation is just, like, words being transferred by both parties. Where I think the real importance is just being heard. Like, that's what you really want. That's what I feel like that's all what we desire. We desire to actually be heard fully and truly, and like just be given space and consideration. That's the true craving, not, yeah.
Yeah, that's a craving, but I don't think it should be a priority.
What do you mean?
Like an analogy would be like if you seek happiness in every moment, you could be stuck in seeking pleasure and sacrificing long-term happiness for short-term pleasure. If you are in a conversation and you want to feel heard, you could be sacrificing connection and ways of being heard by just listening to what they're saying. Like, I don't think it's necessarily being heard, but you just want to feel like you're similar to the other person.
Yeah, I think there's a sense of like validation or...
What?
I'm just trying to like properly understand exactly where you're coming from, but I feel like I can't. I feel like I need more information.
Well, I feel like a lot of people want to feel heard, so they make that the number one priority. And generally that means talking. And talking is not the best way to feel heard.
See, I was seeing it from the alternate perspective, is just being an ear for somebody is like seemingly what it feels like people need the most and crave the most, is being listened to. And that, yeah, I guess though there is a point to like, that's not always beneficial for you or even the person, because if it's impending upon like your needs, and like, I guess like nobody just wants to sit there and listen forever. Like we all have our desires and wishes and what we want to talk about and everything. But I just think a strong basis for connection and closeness is listening fully and like being the listener.
Yeah.
But I think probably feelings of like resentment, and like if that's if that's too much one-sided, like what do you think the issues for that would be?
I think that's just a you problem. Like if you want to feel heard, your only priority should be to hear the other person, because that will be reflected back onto you. It's law of attraction.
See, like I don't know if it necessarily
we were having
does.
a conversation and all I did was listen to you and understand you, what would your impression of me be?
Well, it depends if you were just purely sitting there and going,
That's not what I was saying.
You're just listening. Like you're not doing anything.
I'm listening and figuring out, and I'm understanding you.
Okay,
I'm
like
hearing you.
Yeah, that you're a very good listener, and that you are holding like a lot of space, and obviously hold a lot of confidence. I think that's like confidence, because you're not feeling violated by anything, or there's no like resistance. But I think that would then lead me to go, I wonder how he's doing that. And then question you, because I'd be like, that feels really good right now. How do I get more of that? Or how do I be more of that?
Yeah.
And like, what's his experiences been that's led him to be like this?
So you reciprocate it.
Yeah, true that. Figured it out, mate.
Yeah. And if you feel resentful that they're not reciprocating it, it's probably because you're not actually hearing them. Because if you were hearing them, they would reciprocate it. Unless they're a psychopath, and sometimes you just got to cut your losses. But that's an expectation. Like, you can't expect everyone to reciprocate, because not everyone is in a position to.
Yeah.
Like, every time you feel resentful is a you problem. Which is a tough pill to swallow sometimes.
Yeah. Hey. I think a lot of the time it's expectations that I have that are kind of unjust. And a lot of the time it's my expectations of myself, and they're not being reciprocated in other people. And it's like, well, that doesn't make sense, because these are the expectations I place on myself, I can't expect that they have the same expectations or priorities. Like they're in everyone's in their different.
Yeah, I don't think expectations are bad things. Like, I think it's important to have expectations. And you need to have some expectations of people in order to have a relationship and to build trust.
Yeah, it's true.
But the issue comes when you have an expectation that you're not communicating.
Yeah.
And they're violating it. And you're building resentment because they're violating, but they don't know that they're violating it. So whose problem is that? It's mine.
Boom. True. Yeah, and I think that just leads to like boundaries and like being able to voice your boundaries and your expectations, which I find so hard because like I'm a people pleaser. So I'm just like, it's okay, it's fine, it's good. And then internally I'm like, oh, that's annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess like really the only thing that's helped me in that regard would be doing it slowly, doing it slowly over time and like seeing that it's actually it's actually taken on quite well. Yeah, I think like stating boundaries that are really like thought out in the way that you approach them, or just like the intention is like really pure.
Yeah, you just got to make sure you're telling the truth.
Yeah.
Which can take a second to kind of weed through all the...
Yeah, but I think the way that you do that is different depending on the person and the situation and like, yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, you have different relationships with every person in your life and they all kind of understand you in different ways. So the approach that you're going to take to speak the boundary or speak the expectation would be within the language that relationship has.
Really?
That's how I see it.
Do you have different languages for different people?
Kind of. Well, it's when I say languages, it's like the different things that you talk about with them, or the different things that you both know that you understand quite well, or that they get of you. So you're kind of using that in order to explain it. Like if they've already understood a couple of your priorities or a couple of the things, that's what's going to make them understand where you're coming from.
I guess I just find it really easy because I don't have to worry about that.
See, I think I'm just like very people pleasing, trying to come from like the least emotional reaction, and I'm very scared of like emotional conflict. So I try and find the easiest way in by just explaining a part of myself that I've seen that they understand.
Aren't you betraying yourself by doing that then?
No, because it's truthful.
But people pleasing isn't being truthful.
I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I think it's just more like I just want to make sure this person understands. And I know that they understand this part of me. So I can explain it through that part or in what we've talked about previously. Like, yeah. I don't think it's really hurting me or the other person. And it's still saying the truth. It's just like, maybe I can find an example that will make it more clear. I don't know. Yeah, it's just more using the part of me that they get and explaining it through that lens.
But that whole premise doesn't make sense to me. Because if they only get a part of you, if they only understand a part of you, then you'd be suppressing the rest of you to some degree.
Yeah.
And so by that way, you're betraying yourself and those parts of you by suppressing them in order to keep someone else happy.
Yeah, probably. But I don't really know how else it looks. And I don't know how else to go about it. It's all like in established relationships that I already have like my role and how I'm like, I don't think I can transform that overnight and just show everybody everything. I don't really feel comfortable to.
I think that's the only way to do it. Because then you know who's about it and who's not. And you can just move on really quickly from that. Like if you're just like, this is me, bitches. Take it or leave it. The people who don't want it will leave. And the people who do will stay.
Yeah, I think that's just not where I'm at right now. But I understand what you're saying, and I can see that would be
Ideal.
amazing and
Yeah.
ideal. But yeah, I'm just not really in that stage of me right now. And
Is that because you don't know what that looks like?
that would be an element of it, yeah. But yeah. It's also, I guess it's all just that, maybe. I don't know how it would look. And fear of rejection, fear of like not knowing where the relationships in my life stand after showing my full self to everybody. But I think more and more so I'm showing more and more of myself to everybody. But it's not like a process of, here's everything. Like it's more just like, can I show this side? Okay, here's a little tester. And then going, okay, that's all right. And most of the time, even if it's not reciprocated in the most ideal way, I'm like, oh, but it feels good and that's okay. And they're still here and that's okay. We can have differences.
Yeah.
So I think it's beneficial, but for me, I definitely think it's a gradual process of still figuring out who I am. And like, I feel like we're always developing more and more. So that it's things that I really hold firm and true for myself that I start to then implement into all my relationships gradually. And when I meet new people, trying to be as just who I am as possible, because there's no prior known Kiras or whatever. Like it's just like trying to be me.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's hard because I think I'm very like influenced, as I think we all are, by our environment and the situation you meet people in, what your role seemingly is in that. Like if I meet a person at work compared to if I meet a person at uni, compared to I meet someone in a full moon circle, like they are seeing different sides of me that therefore I feel like I can express more of that side.
But why can't you just be you in all of those areas?
I can, but there's just different. Yeah, I don't know.
Do you want it to be like that?
I don't see an issue with it. But I do think it's getting more and more holistic as I'm becoming more and more like sure of myself and like the things that I'm building and the concepts that are like more core within myself.
But so you don't see it as a problem?
I see it as a more of a desire. Like I do wish to be more wholly myself in all aspects of my life, and just to like not shy away from my opinions even when I don't think they're necessarily going to be well received. But there's also like, it's not been really an issue, that much of an issue. I don't know. I don't know. It is what it is. But I do desire to be more and more myself. But I also do think different environments just bring out different parts of me. Like it's not like I'm consciously trying to repress some aspect of myself. It just kind of happens due to the environment that I'm in.
I think that's a problem. Like it might not be a big problem to you, and if it's not, then like that's cool.
But that's a problem.
But if it was me,
you're right.
I would just feel like I would feel like I have low self-worth.
See, I just feel like my inner world is like safe, and that I can control everything in there, and that I don't know, I just can't really be bothered to like fight people on stuff that like I believe, or that I know that they don't disagree with. Like a lot of the time I just really can't be bothered.
Yeah, but that's a different thing. Like that's just being in an environment that doesn't align with you. You know?
But I think that is in most environments that hold other people.
Well, that feels like a problem. That just means that you're around people in many environments that you don't align with.
Well, yeah, I think, well, maybe I'm just seeing it like that. Maybe I'm like blocking a lot of myself off because I'm just assuming they're not like me. Don't say what you think right now because I'm scared of the rejection.
Yeah. Which also, like, isn't true. Like, I feel like most people, like, we're all mostly the same. We would just disagree on a few things.
Mm. Yeah, and if we could understand how that other person got to that perspective, we would accept, yeah, and see it. Would be like, oh yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It's something we should go towards, though, for sure.
What do you mean?
That conversation, rather than withhold our opinion.
Yeah, totally. But I do think that is, for me, like a step-by-step, slowly emerging process of like, show a little bit of yourself. Okay, cool. It's fine. It's good. It was accepted. It was rejected. Whatever. Cool. Just showing little parts of myself and being like okay with it. And yeah, I'm okay with that.
The face you just pulled says otherwise.
I think.
I mean, maybe it just wasn't something that was really in your awareness and you just need to think about it more.
Well, it was a little while ago and it was like center focus, and then recently it hasn't really been my main focus.
Yeah. And if it's a behavior that you're not used to, then it's going to take a while to learn.
Yeah. But I do think it's gotten really good with meeting new people.
Yeah.
Like just showing more so of myself. But it is based on a lot of assumptions of what I think about them.
Yeah. Which is also a natural part of meeting people, because if you are open, there is a possibility of conflict or getting hurt or betrayal.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I'm just like naturally a bit guarded, but like that's okay.
Yeah.
That's all right.
That's all right.
That's all right, isn't it?
Just got to find what works.
Yeah. Right now I feel like it's working. It's just on the path, growing, working it out.
Dope.
I feel like we talked a lot about me this episode. me.
Is that a bad thing?
Well, I like it to be kind of even and to have your perspective a bit more. Well, maybe we should give a little bit more of your perspective of how you handle situations. Do you think that would be of benefit?
You would have to be more specific to know if I have anything to say.
What is the benefit of showing your full self in all environments? No matter who's around. No matter where you are.
I think it's just the easiest way to live. And you can then begin to attract the life that you actually want if you're being authentically you. Like, you just cut out the noise.
Can you be more specific within?
Like, if you show up as much of you as you can, you're going to attract the people that align to that, and you're going to repel the people who don't. And so, like, that will create a life that is aligned with you. As opposed to if you're kind of half in, half out, you're going to have more fluff, I suppose. And I guess the trade-off is just like how comfortable are you with conflict, and how important is it to you that you attract the life that you want? Because some people,
So,
they don't give a fuck about conflict, so they just do them. But some people really struggle with it.
but what about you? Do you think you are authentically yourself 100% of the time in all scenarios and situations?
It's kind of hard to say because you never fully know yourself. But I would guess like 90% of the time.
You think you're just acting out of that?
Yeah, I don't feel like I'm putting an act on or suppressing or anything like that. I feel like it helps that I just don't put myself in a lot of situations.
Does that help?
I think so.
But then you're not testing it in all environments.
No, but I feel like I tested enough to know sort of where I stand and what people I want to surround myself with. And I also have a clear goal of what I want to achieve. So I can more easily figure out where I want to go, the environments I want to put myself in.
But if you don't, I don't know, I feel like that seems a little bit limiting in some ways.
It is if you don't know what your goals are.
Well, I'm just like, you're believing that the probability that you've made the decisions that some environment, like certain environments, don't get you to where you want to be.
No, that's not what I think. Like, I'll get there regardless, but I just think some paths are easier and faster and more enjoyable.
No, but we're talking about environments and you being yourself authentically in environments. And you saying that you specifically choose to not put yourself in some environments that you know won't get you there as fast. But how do you know that that's true when you don't test it and there's a level of like probability?
Well, I know I have a couple of assumptions and like filters that I run it through. Right.
The bottleneck model.
If you want to call it that, we can call it that. The first one would be like, would I do this thing by myself?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's a no, then it's pretty much always like a safe, I'd rather do something I would do by myself. Because that for me is the truest test of what I actually want to do. For some people, that might not be the truest test of what they want to do, but for me, it is, I would say. Does that make sense so far? You with me? Doesn't seem like it.
I just think it's hard when you haven't tried everything. Just to be like, would I want to do this by myself? If you've not done it before, then how would you know?
Well, it depends what it is. If I've never done it before, that's a different question.
If you've never done something by yourself before.
No,
you've
if
got to
I've just
try it.
never done it at all.
But isn't doing something by yourself a completely different experience to doing it with a group of people?
Not really, because I feel like when I'm with people, I'm just having my own experience and it's not dependent on other people.
Right, okay.
It is slightly different because you can bounce off other people, but I can have an experience by myself with other people.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, second.
Second would be, who is it going to be with? What do they like doing? What have I heard about them? And things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
Like assessing who's going to be there.
So there's a lot of assumptions that go into that.
Only if it's people I don't know very well.
And you just trust that.
I trust it less than the first filter, but I still trust it to some degree.
Mm-hmm. Is that, and then is there a third one? Or is that?
What else was I going to do? Like, what were my original plans? Like, if someone was to invite me to something, I'd probably just ask those 3 questions. Where is it? Would I want to do it by myself? Who's going to be there? And what was I going to do instead?
Mm-hmm. So you can feel like you can be yourself in all environments that you say yes to that.
It's a lot easier because generally I gravitate towards familiar environments. And I'm making sure I'm not surrounding myself with people who definitely aren't a fit to that.
Mm.
Which isn't very often. The moral of the story. The moral of the story is be authentically yourself as much as you can, because then you'll attract the life that you want. And with that, go live your life. And we'll see you next week. Same bat channel, same bat time. Like and subscribe, 5 stars on Spotify, Apple Music, DM at In Your Mind Pod on Instagram and TikTok with questions or episode suggestions. Thank you very much for watching, and we will see you next week. Peace.
Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed. Bye.